joining us, maybe. Anyway, we're in the Gemara, actually it's Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, if you pick that up. And if you remember, last week we concentrated on the view of Rashi, and as a quick summary, if you remember, we've got the Mishnah and the Brisa, and then Rabbi Avohu. The Mishnah said that the middle part, let's take a further step back. The Torah says we need to hear Yom Teruah, which means there's going to be the Teruah sound, which is the middle part of a sandwich, because there are other psukim. In fact, the Gemara deals with that. We won't have time this year to look at that. But there are other psukim which tell us that any Teruah has before it a tekiah and after it tekiah, because it says uskatim Teruah, various psukim in the Torah. It also mentioned the word Yom Teruah 3 times. The word Teruah is mentioned. So from that we learn on Rosh Hashanah you must hear the Teruah plus a tekiah before it and a tekiah after it, which meant really, according to that, all you need are 9 notes in total. A tekiah, a Teruah, a tekiah, 3 of those, and that's it. However, as we saw in the Gemara, there's an argument. Do you say that that middle part of the sandwich is in fact what we call a Teruah? The Torah calls a Teruah, but we don't know what the Torah exactly what that means. Does it mean the Teruah that we call a Teruah, the shorter notes, da, 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 da? Does it mean the longer notes, a shvarim, more of a moan, a longer note? Or according to Rabbi Avohu, we have this shvarim plus a Teruah being that middle part. We've got one big question, we haven't yet answered it, and we're still not going to answer it this week, which, if you remember, what's going on here? How come people have forgotten about the shofar, what you're meant to blow? That's a very big question. The question we said of Rab Haigorn has got a most wonderful answer, but watch this space. We'll keep that Emetz Hashem in store for Erev Rosh Hashanah, like next week. So leaving that aside, but we do have to blow all types. Therefore, if someone is going to blow for someone, and there'll be lots of that going on, privately, then you blow what's called 30 tekiyahs, because you'll blow tekiyah, shavarim, Teruah, tekiyah, 3 of those. You'll have tekiyah, shavarim, tekiyah, 3 of those. Tekiyah, Teruah, tekiyah, 3 of those to ensure you've got the whole lot. So you've got 4, 3 lots of 4, that's 12, 3 lots of 3, 9, 3 lots of 3, another 9. In total, you've got 30 kolos. When you talk about the 30 sounds, that's what we're talking about. The question now is, well, we saw in the Mishnah, we saw in the Gemara, that the middle part of the sandwich is the same size, or certainly is a minimum. We've seen you can blow longer, but as a minimum, the middle part of the sandwich should be the same as the outside of the sandwich. A few more people with us, good. Yes, either side, the tekiyahs either side are the same as the middle part, which is the Teruah in between. So, we have the following. According to Rashi, the Teruah, which is the note in the middle, is 3 separate notes. Da, 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 that's it. Shavarim, obviously, Shavarim are longer than, well, we've got a longer note of a shever, right? That will have to be slightly longer. Du, 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 or du, 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 slightly longer than. So let's take numbers, and please query if there's anything not understood. If the middle part is 3, the tekiah will be the time it takes to blow 3 notes. The time for 3. With me? Minimum. If, however, you were blowing a shavarim, 3 shavarim, clearly it's more than 1 note. So let's say 2. You see what I mean? A shever would be 2 notes. The time it takes to blow 2 separate notes. There you'd have 3 shavarim. So 3, and each one is 2 at least. 3 2s are 6. And therefore, the tekiah would have to be the time it takes to blow 6 separate notes. With me? If you'd be blowing shvorim and a teruah, then what would you need? You'd need the shvorim, which we've said made up of 2 separate notes each one. You with me? A shever is the time it takes to have 2 separate notes, according to Rashi. So therefore, you'd have 3 shvorim, would take the time of 6 notes, plus an additional teruah, which is 3 notes. 6 plus 3 is 9. Therefore, the tekiah, when you're blowing shvorim teruah, should be 9. With me? So you've either got on the tekiah teruah tekiah, the length of the tekiah should be how long? 3 at least. The time it takes to blow 3 separate notes. If you be blowing shavorim in between, each shever is the time it takes to blow 2 at least. 2 3s are 6. The tekiah will be 6. If you're blowing tekiah shavorim teruah tekiah, you'd need 6 plus 3 in the middle. With me? 6 and 3 is 9. Therefore, the tekiah would be the length of 9 notes. Fine. That is all the view of Rashi. And that's very important because if someone blew the shofar like Rashi, you are actually fulfilling the mitzvah because Rashi says that's the pshat, and we're quite happy to take that. However, there is another view, and this is the view I think most people are familiar with, and this is the view that people should be aiming for. Now, although that was Rashi, we now turn today to Rashi's Talmud and Rashi's grandson. Now, we may be familiar with the Rashbam, Reb Shlomo ben Meir, Rabbeinu Tam, Yaakov ben Meir. There were 2 other brothers. These are some of the grandsons of Rashi. And we're going to deal with one today together with a Talmud of Rashi who disagree, I'm sure with great respect to the revered Rashi, but they disagree. Now let's have a look at this. The beginning of the line in Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, I'm doing the Tosfos. This is very important because this is actually the way we paskin, as we'll see through the Mishnah Berurah, etc. So are you okay? It's about 25 lines down in Tosfos, Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, maybe even more. The beginning of the line is Riva. The first word is Riva. Have you got that? No? Have you got the beginning of the line which means Riva in Tosfos, Lamed Gimel Amud Beis? 20 lines down, probably. Has anybody got it?
Veriva, not Riva. Veriva.
Very, quite right. I'm sorry. Yes. Veriva, quite right.
Threw us out completely.
Oh, absolutely. Didn't know where you were. Veriva. Have you people got Veriva? I guess about 20 lines down. Right. Here we go. Veriva. Normally be Rabbi Yitzchak ben Osher. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Harav Meir. And that's the second one is the grandson, Reb Meir. Reb Meir was the son-in-law of Rashi. And this is one of his sons. I say he's the father of Rabbeinu Tam, the Rashbam, and here's another son, Reb Yitzchak ben Reb Meir. Okay, so we've got those 2 individuals, those 2 Rishonim. They explain the Gemara that we've learned until now with one crucial difference. When we learned in the Mishnah, we had Shiur, Teruah, Kesholosh Yavavos. Do you remember that in the Mishnah? Third line down in the Mishnah, on the same page, Shiur, Teruah, and we said Sholosh Yavavos. Do you remember how we explained Yavavos? Says Rashi, and he doesn't have Ker, Sholosh Yavavos, and a Yavava is defined according to Rashi as a single note. So therefore, 3 Yavavos are da-da-da. That is the Truah in the middle. Says the Talmidim, Riva v'harav Yitzchok ben Harav Meir, often known in short as Rivam. If you've come at the Rivam, this is normally who you're talking about, Rivam. Mefarshim, they explain the Gemara differently. Do Yevava he sholish koichos shel kol shehu. Each Yevava is made up of 3 separate notes. A Yevava is not just one single note, it's a group of 3. Oh, Nimtzeis will therefore find that when it says teruah, when it says, remember here in the Mishnah, Shiur teruah k'sholosh yevavos, if every yevava is already 3, then the length of the teruah in the middle will be how many notes? 9. And that's how we have today the teruah in the middle being a minimum of 9 notes. Because this is the view of the Rivah and the Rivam. And if you remember, we were talking about where do we learn this from? Remember, the Torah calls it Yom Yabova Yehelahain. Do you remember? Yom Yabova, it's a day of, remember, Yavova means crying. And the question is, we weren't sure which type of cry we were talking about. Here we're saying that the Yavova in our Mishnah is 3 notes. So when it says 3 Yavovas, it means 3 notes. With me?
Norman, can I just ask about the wording? Kochos. Kochos means a note, does it, in this context? Tesha
Yes, it does.
kochos.
Yes,
it's an unusual use of the word. It is,
but it's trying to differentiate between Rashi, when Rashi says sholish kolos, instead of being just 3 kolos, 3 separate kolos, you're right, it is an interesting word. It could have just said the word he sholish kolos shel kol shehu. Yeah, good point. Could have said kolos like Rashi does. Yeah. They're synonyms. I think the idea is the smallest possible koyach.
I understand. It's a contrast. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But you're right. Rashi uses the word kolos. It's the same thing. There's synonyms in this context. So
what's the root? The root of what's the root of kochot? What is it? What's the root?
Koach. Chof vov ches.
Yeah. Is that what?
Koach just means strength. Koyach. Yeah.
So like 3 strong marks.
No. I think the point. That's why he goes on shel kol shehu. Look at Tosfos. Tosfos says koichos shel kol shehu, the smallest possible koyach strength you could have, which is can't be anything shorter than that. That is by definition 1 note. With me? So 3 notes is a Yavava, but the Mishnah says they've got to be 3 Yavavas. 3 Yavavas therefore means 9 notes. So the teruah in the middle, when you're blowing tekiah, teruah, tekiah, you will have 9 notes. Nimtzeis, I'm going back to Tosfos. Have you got the Tosfos, hopefully? Teruah, teisha, koichos. Could have said kolos. I think the idea of the contrast, as you say, Mervyn, the idea is it's the smallest possible note you can have. 9 of those will qualify for a teruah in the middle of the tekiah, teruah, which therefore means how long will the tekiah have to be either side of the middle of the sandwich? That will have to be the same. Because if you remember in the Mishnah, the length of the tekiah, and the brisa as well, the length of the tekiah is same as the length of the teruah. With me? The only difference being the tekiah is 1 straight note and the teruah are separate notes. With me? So we've moved from last week where we had the tekiah, the length of tekiah just being the time it takes to blow 3 separate notes. According to this view, the minimum tekiah will be 9 notes. With me? And that's in tekiah, teruah, tekiah. Keep going in Tosfos. V'shir tekiah kachi. So now let's think. Let's think when you're blowing shavorim. We were concerned, if you remember last week, and going back to Rashi a moment, if you're blowing your shavorim, and instead of a shever, according to Rashi, let's say it was 2, you extended it to 3, we said you've already got yourself a tekiah. So be very careful not to extend the length of a shever. With me? Once you've gone from 2 to 3, you've already ended up with a tekiah, which would be a tekiah if you were blowing tekiah, teruah, tekiah. Have I lost everybody? Again, according to Rashi, a teruah is 3 separate notes. A shever, obviously longer. Don't make it too long. If you went then it would already be classified as a tekiah if you were blowing tekiah, teruah, tekiah. That's not called a shever. With me? That is not called a shever, and therefore beware. Now, according to this view, the view of the Rivah and the Rivam, that the teruah are 9 notes, right? The tekiah either side of the teruah, therefore also 9 notes. Therefore, when you're blowing shavorim, you never need to be worried if you extended the length of a shever too long. As long as it hasn't hit 9, you wouldn't yet have got a tekiah. Again, when you're blowing tekiah, teruah, tekiah, how long are the tekiyahs? 9. The time it takes to blow the middle part of the sandwich, which is 9 separate notes. So when you blow your 3 shavorim, if you lengthen them slightly, don't worry about it. It won't be classified as a tekiah because you've got to get to 9 to get to a tekiah. You with me? And that's what Tosfos means here. Ula pirushon, according to their explanation, I'm now back in Tosfos, Ein, beginning of the line, according to their view, the view of the Rivah and the Rivam, Ein lochush, don't be worried about it. Imarich ksas b'shvarim. Obviously, if you blew a sheva, which was 10, 12, that really is a tekiah. But if you just blew a shvarim, which is rather than being a shorter note, it's slightly longer, don't worry about it because it won't be classified as a tekiah unless you get to the length of the time it takes to blow 9 notes. With me? Fine. So, ein lochish imar ketzas b'shvarim. Right. So now, the question is, according to this view, how long should a shever be? Well, a yavava, we said, is the time it takes to blow 3. And then remember, there are 3 of those, so it's 9 notes in total. The shever is taken as long, even slightly longer than a yavava, which means a minimum of the time of 3 notes. With me? So a shever is the time it takes to blow slightly more than a yavava, just 3 plus, if you like. With me? So when you're blowing shavorim, each shever should be 3 notes. Normally we explain the shever being slightly longer than the teruah. So it's 3 notes minimum. With me? 3 3s are 9. So therefore, when you're blowing a tekiah, shavorim tekiah, how long should the tekiah be? Also 9 or slightly more than 9, only slightly. You with me? Let me explain again. When you blow the teruah, you're blowing 3 sets of 3 notes. Yeah? The tekiah is going to be either side 9. Yeah? When you're blowing the shvarim, you're blowing 3 notes of 3 or 3 plus, and therefore your tekiah should be 3 sets of 3, although the shavarim are straight notes rather than being separate notes, and therefore that's your shavarim and the tekiah either side of the sandwich. You with me? Or have I lost anybody here? Lost everybody. Yeah? So have a look now at Tosfos. V'tzorich, beginning of the line is v'tzorich. V'tzorich limshoich litzkiya shel kashrak. Do you remember kashrak? That's tekiya, shavorim, trua, tekiya. Le pirusham, according to their explanation. Now let's see if we can work this out ourselves. A teruah is how long? 3 sets of 3 separate notes. Total of 9 notes. Therefore, the tekiya will have to be 1 straight note, which is 9. 3 shavarim, let's take the real minimum. 3, a length of 3, 3, 3, 3. Again, 9 notes. If you're playing therefore shavarim and a teruah, how long will your tekiya be? 9 and 9 is 18. With me? If you're playing tekiya, teruah, tekiya, you need 9 either side. If you're blowing a tekiya, shavarim, also 9 either side, maybe slightly longer than 9, but 9. If you're blowing tekiya, shavarim, teruah, tekiya, we said the sandwich, whatever you do in the middle, as a minimum, that's got to be the tekiya either side. Therefore, according to that, the tekiya will have to be the time it takes to blow 18 separate notes. If you were a professional, not professional, I should say, but an experienced Baal Tokeya, you can do your teruahs extremely fast. And if it's not as long as you think, 9 separate notes, like a machine gun, yeah, 9 of those would be the time it takes to blow 9 separate notes would be the time of a long tekiya. But if you're doing shavarim and a teruah in between, it would have to be the time of both of those, which we've said is 9 plus 3 shavarim. This time, your 3 shavarim are 3 separate notes, each one 3 or 3 plus. 9 plus 9 is 18. Back now to Tosfos. V'tzorich limshoich, again, v'tzorich. V'tzorich limshoich litzkiya shel kashrak. Lepirusham, according to their explanation, kashir gimel shvarim, like 3 shvarim, and on top of that, your 9 separate notes, koichos, again using this word koyach, your 9 separate notes that you're doing for your teruah. You with me? So that's how we have the rule that if you're blowing a tekiya, as he classifies here, kashrak, don't use that word outside, people don't know what you're talking about, but if you use the kashrak, the tekiya will be the time it takes to blow 18 separate, only the time. In between, you'll have your shvarim teruah, and then you'll have a tekiya the other side. If you're blowing just the teruah in between, it will be the time for 9. So the 2 numbers to remember would be the time it takes to blow 9, and you can do that yourself if you are a Baal Tokeya. How long does it take to blow 9 notes? That's all you need. But you need the 9 notes minimum, and then the tekiya either side will be the time as a straight note of 9. If you're blowing shavarim and teruah, the tekiya will be that much longer, because as we said in the sandwich, either side of the sandwich is the same as the middle. Malcolm's got a point. Malcolm, yes, sir.
Hi. Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
So the thing about the original dispute about what the meaning of teruah is,
That still stays.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I just want to sort of phrase my question. So basically, if it gives rise to the notion of the shavarim, that's where that came, because it wasn't sure what teruah really meant.
Yes.
And then because of not wanting to, to cover all the possibilities.
Yes.
The possibility of, it either is shavarim or it is the original teruah, or it's both together.
Yeah. When you say original teruah, that's the word used in the Torah, which we today call a teruah, the shorter notes. We don't know what the Torah's word is. Yes. Very good.
Yeah. Okay. So then, no, my question is actually about when you count the number of calls. So this particular proof that you've just, or this particular opinion of the 18, you know, that your tekiah has to equal the 18,
Yes.
goes with the idea that what your central double note is in fact the complete teruah. So that accords with that Rabbi Abaya's idea that, you know, it could either be just shavarim, or it could be just the
Yes.
the teruah, or it could be the shrine teruah together. So this is now
Correct.
the shrine teruah. So why, if it's that, because I always get confused when you said that you have to blow 30, you know, and that there's these different groups.
Yes.
Do you count
No.
the Shvarim
No.
Teruah as one note, which you should do, because in fact it is actually only one note. Because
Yes.
Shvarim Teruah is its own, is a combined, it becomes one note, if you see what I mean? When they're
Yes.
combined.
Very good point.
They're not,
When we talk about the third, it is very confusing, because here we've spoken about a teruah being 9 notes. So where are we up to here? So that's why Tosfos and Rashi use this word of koyach or koilos. We're talking about a different numbering system. What do I mean by that? When we're talking in Tosfos about 18, we mean sound, actual notes. As you'd say, that's 3. When we are talking about 30 notes, it's like with a capital N. We're calling that 9 a note, a coil. And maybe that's Mervyn mentioned why we use the word koach, the koilos. Koyach means just it's a strength, isn't it? A koyach, a sound. So perhaps we should differentiate between using the word sound and a note.
Yep.
We do not mean here, when we talk about, when we classify a teruah, I know it's 9 notes, but we call it one capital N note. Maybe we should use a different word in English if you like.
No, so that's what I meant. Sorry, that was my mistake. So
That's the point. Absolutely, you're spot on. So the middle, the middle part is a teruah counts as 1. A shavarim, 3 of them count as 1. When you do them both together, I know that the middle part is now, that's all a teruah, but for our purposes, we are calling it 2 separate notes. I agree with you. That 2 separate notes in the middle of a shvarim teruah is confusing, because the Torah is calling it a teruah, and we're calling a shvarim a teruah. So let's not get confused. So there are 2 different rules going on here. When you're talking about koilos, sounds, it means actual notes. When we talk about, that's perhaps with a little n. When you talk about a teruah, that's called a note. When you blow a teruah or shavarim and a teruah, we classify that in one way as 1 note, capital N as far as the Torah is concerned. We will call it 2 notes. In fact, it's much more than that. According to this, you're going to have 9 notes for a teruah. You're going to have 3 notes for a shavarim. In fact, it's 12 notes with a little n. With me?
Yeah.
So when you blow tekiah, shavarim, teruah, tekiah, your tekiah is 1 note. That's not a problem. The shavarim, teruah in between, the shavarim are 3 separate notes, little n. The teruah are 9 very short notes with a little n. Together they make up the teruah of the Torah, but we call it 2 separate notes combined, and that's why it's called kashrak. Kashrak, which we count as 4. It doesn't really count. It really is, the middle part is just 1 point, which is called a teruah. So I hope that's answered. In other words, it's a different counting system.
Yeah, but I don't quite agree with it. Anyway, I don't quite agree with it. Because if the tekiah is supposed to be equal to it, what you're basically saying, there's a new note made up of its composite note.
Absolutely, that's exactly what we're saying.
So where do you count? But so when you say I've got to have, give it a different word like blasts. Okay, so if I have tekiah,
Shavarim
tekiah is 3 blasts.
Correct.
Tekiah, teruah, tekiah is 3 blasts.
Correct.
Now, it's common to say that Tekiah, Shavarim, Teruah, Tekiah is 4 blasts, but really
Yes.
it's 3 blasts according
Correct.
to
You're,
this.
I agree with you 100%. It's a wrong way to call it, really, but it will confuse people. Because if we still call it 3 blasts, you wouldn't be able to differentiate between the middle being a Shavarim or a Teruah or both together. It's just a way of explaining there are 2 notes. You're right. It's 3. You're right. I think that's very good. We can use the word blasts if you like. Don't use it too much. Yeah, but it's 4 blasts. And what is it really? It's 1 note, 1 blast and 1 note. The middle will be 3 shavarim, which will be 3 notes.
Yeah.
A teruah, which are 9 notes. We're calling them 2 blasts. And 2 blasts will equal what the Torah will classify as a teruah in this instance. So yes, well, I'm happy with that. We can use your notation or your wording and call that a blast. Yeah, what a blast. Yeah, okay. Very good indeed.
Can I come in? Norman?
Yes.
Can I come in here?
Of course you can.
You explained that originally there was the methodology, to use that word, of Rashi. And
Yes.
presumably everybody in the Ashkenaz Jewish world followed Rashi.
No. Although Rashi is a view, and an incredible view, it would be up to the Rabbonim to decide how you're paskening. A very good point. Let me just clarify this a little bit. Hold on to that question of yours. Well, sorry, let's hear the question. Sorry.
So I want to know, on the basis of what authority, I think it was Rivo and Rivam,
Yes.
came out with this new approach.
Yeah, I mean, presumably it was also based on other teachings going back. You see, you've got the problem with it says here, Shiur Teruah K'sholosh Yevavos. If you've got, look at that, I think it might be crucial, that letter Chaf. Go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says Shiur Teruah K'sholosh Yevavos. The length of a Teruah is like the length of 3 Yevavos. According to Rashi, it's not like 3 Yevavos at all. It is 3 Yevavos. Look at Rashi's Girsa. He's got the word sholosh. He doesn't say sholosh Yevavos. According to Rashi, a Teruah is 3 Yevavos. If you have the word it's like. It doesn't make sense to say it's like if it's exactly 3. However, according to the Tosfos, these 2 other views, yes, a Yevava is 3 notes, and therefore a Teruah is like the 3 Yevavos, because each Yevava is made up of 3. In other words, basically what we're saying is this: there are 2 ways, I'd say, learning going back, where the word Yevava, what does it mean? Does the word Yevava mean 3 kolos kolshu, as Rashi says? Or no, it actually, looking at this, the wording and presumably other sources too, it actually means 9 notes. Each Yevava is 3. Now, it's very interesting, where they get that, that's their sources. Rashi, presumably from his teachers. These others also had other teachers than Rashi. So there's 2 major differences here. You've got these 2 different views. I can't really help you other than to say this. It sounds like, again, they wouldn't just be, Rashi says something, it must have been following their earlier teachers too. This must have been the tradition Rashi had, and therefore they must have had a different tradition saying, no, it's 9 notes. But as we said before, you see, there can be confusion in this. I'll tell you why. We've said in this Gemara that this is a minimum. We're talking about minima here. Imagine, and if you're a Baal Tokeah, I'm sure you'll actually agree with this, that it's quite hard to stop abruptly when you're doing the very short notes. if the halacha is you're allowed to continue, not too long, but you're allowed to continue, then often you would have heard these 9 tekiyos. Now, whether it really is 9 tekiyos or just really 3, but the person's, just kept going. So back to your point, Charles, it may well be that in the shuls, they'd hardly heard any difference between the two. Because even if you were of the opinion of Rashi, just to do, it may have often extended much longer than that, so the shuls would have heard pretty much the same thing. But there we are, we have this machlokas, we have lots of machlokas. The difference between this question and the question I asked from Rabbeinu Hai is this is a machlokas, a medieval machlokas between Rashi and I say the Talmudim of Rashi. It's not a machlokas in a Mishnah. But what we were learning before when we had the Mishnah versus the Brisa versus Rabbi Avo, that's major. Because they're totally different notes. A teruah, a shvarim, they're different notes. How is it possible that they had these different schools on a mitzvah, which is every year? That is a problem. The problem of the Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos is less, it's much later, it's a medieval Machlokes. And also, there's not that much difference between them in practical terms, because even if you're blowing 3, you often may have blown a lot longer than 3. So, in answer to your question, Charles, yes, there is a machlokes. Not entirely clear from here where it stems from, other than that was tradition they had. It really is 9. It's not 3.
It's like Norman. It's like the machlokas in Tefillin, which is of medieval origin as well.
Rashi remains on very good, absolutely. Well, you do find it. No, I think this is easier because all we're saying is, according to Rashi, this is the minimum. The minimum is 3. It may well be that even in Rashi's shul, they were blowing longer truas. More notes, because there's nothing wrong. You can blow more than 3. So, in fact, in practical terms, it may not have been that noticeable. Whereas the differences we've seen between a Mishnah, a Brisa, Shvarim, and Trua, that is major. And therefore, that still needs an answer. And I'll say that hopefully, Mirz Hashem, I hope we'll reveal the answer next week, or the answer according to Rabbi Gon. But at the moment, that is the double. We've got this Machlokas Rashi, and I say the Talmidim, and just continue that bit of Tosfos. Now, this is the tricky piece. Let's see if we can understand this. Have a look at Tosfos. So what Tosfos is saying himself, although we've got these Talmidim, they are saying, and this is fascinating, they are saying there is the tradition of Rashi. And they're not belittling it. They're disagreeing, but they're saying, and this is Tosfos saying, there is the view of Rashi, which is 3 separate notes, and there is the view of Tosfos, which is 9 notes. Now, what does that make? What difference does that make for the tekiah? Do you remember the difference? According to Rashi, what is the minimum length of a tekiah when you're blowing tekiah, teruah, tekiah? Just 3. And that's why, according to Rashi, beware when you're blowing shvarim, don't make it too long, because once you hit 3, it won't be classified as a shvarim anymore. It will move into the camp of being called a tekiah. According to Tosfos, that's not such a concern, because the minimum length of a tekiah will be 9, not 3. With me? Now, continue to, let's see if we can understand this. Beginning of the line is koichos. Says Tosfos, umi shelo moshach hatekiyos, someone who does not blow long tekiyos. Right? Imagine the tekiyos is blowing a less than 9. What does that mean? If the tekiyos is blowing a less than 9, he must be of Rashi's camp. Because according to Tosfos, there's a minimum of 9, because 3 3s are 9. But someone who doesn't do that, but he lengthened out those shvarim and made them longer and made them actually up to 3. Lo kiyah mitzvah, lo kamar, lo kamar. He hasn't done the mitzvah like Tosfos. because his tekiyos are too short. He hasn't done the mitzvah like Rashi because his shvarim are too long. With me? So you can see from Tosfos himself that he's allowing and assuming there are these two views that can be held, and finishes off Tosfos on that piece at least. V'Rabbeinu Chananel pirish kapirish hakuntras. That's quite strong. So it's saying an earlier pirish, earlier even than Rashi. That's Rabbeinu Chananel. He is saying, no, it's not. I'm following the view of Rashi. In other words, adding weight to the view of Rashi. But there are these two views. Now, when you turn to Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Tov Kuf Tzadi, I've got the Shulchan Aruch here in front of me. It says, Yesh Omrim, the Shulchan Aruch, Sheshir Tekiyah Ketrua, that we understand, V'Shir Trua Kshloisha Yevovois. And says the Shulchan Aruch, what does that mean? Because the word Yevava is ambiguous. Dahainu Shloish, like Tosfos' wording, Shloisha Koches Ba'alma Kol Shehu. So the first view of Shulchan Aruch is like Rashi. With me? That's the first view of the Shulchan Aruch. What's fascinating is that same Shulchan Aruch, he then says, V'yesh Omrim, however, there are some that say, and we've seen who they are Tosfos, the Bali Tosfos, the Rivah and the Rivom, that the Yevava itself is 3. Therefore, a Shiur Teruah will be kat shloisha Yevavos. Right. So, let's just revise. According to Tosfos, how long will the tekiyah have to be when you blow a teruah in the middle? 9. The length it takes to blow 9 notes. And the Shiur tekiyah should also be, as he said, 9 notes. But he does point out when you blow, this is when you need a little bit more breath. If you're blowing tekiyah, shavarim teruah tekiyah, according to the second view, how long should that tekiyah be? 9 for the teruah, 9 for the shvarim, 3 3s are 9. In other words, a total of 18. And he mentions the same point. So you can see the Shulchan Aruch himself is allowing 2 views, because the Shulchan Aruch finishes like Tosfos did and says, someone who's not blowing a tekiyah of 9, that, imagine when he's blowing teruah, he blows less than 9. That means he must subscribe to the view of Rashi. But he blew shavarim, which were longer, and they ended up being 3 or more. That's a problem, because it's now a tekiyah. You with me? So you can see from the Shulchan Aruch that you can take this view, Rashi's view, or the Tosfos' view. Says the Mishnah Berurah, and this is, everybody agrees with this, that the later commentaries, post Shulchan Aruch, say, and this is where anybody actually blowing should bear this in mind, Nochain lasos kein lechatchila. It is best to behave as the Tosfos said, and that's, I think we all know, these 9 notes for a teruah. However, this is very interesting. What happened if someone did blow just 3? Someone who blew 3, that's okay. Someone b'di'eved die b'shloisha koiches, like the view of Rashi. So we see, Charles, you see this point, both these views are carried through today. What does that mean? Whether you hold like Rashi or Tosfos, we prefer, and the Lashon of the Mishnah was nochain, it's preferred, it's correct to behave like Tosfos, in other words, with 9. Make sure the tekiyos are long tekiyos of 9 in between. But if you did imagine whatever length you did your tekiyah, but you did just 3 notes as a teruah, b'di'eved, that means if you've already done it, that would be fine. Although I think you'd find in most communities, the Rav would probably ask you to redo that. But strictly speaking, that is fine, it's 3. So generally, I don't think you'll find people talking about Rashi's view at all, because it's going to end up a bit too complicated having these 2 views. People stick just with the view of Tosfos, which is 9 in between. And when you're blowing tekiah, shavarim, teruah tekiah, make sure the length of that tekiah is doubly long to make up for a 9. And then again, 9 for the shavarim, each sheva being 3. You with me? Now, there's another question for Malcolm. Yes, sir.
The question of minima applies
Yes.
to the teruah
And the tekiah.
Yeah, but does
Yes.
it apply to the shavarim?
Yeah, you're quite right. Very good question.
Because if it does,
It's also yes.
Because if it does, then you could have, let's say, a tekiah of 7, a shavarim, which is longer, of, let's say, 4, and it was still.
You're out. Because the tekiah of 7 is too short.
No, but you could be following Rashi. You could be saying, okay.
Yeah. If you're following Rashi,
I'm doing a 3. I'm extending it to 7 because it's a minimum of 3, so I'm doing 7, and then I'm doing my sheva, which should be under 3, but I'm making it long. I should.
That's a trouble. Once you made a sheva more than 3, I've ended up with a tekiah according to Rashi. Because Rashi said the tekiah only needs to be 3 minimum.
Okay, so there's a limit. Yeah.
So there's a limit. So therefore, we tend to remove the view of Rashi and just think about, we're trying to make this simple. So stick with the view of Tosfos, which is 9 in between, longer tekiahs. But it's worth knowing, if there were just 3, as long as your tekiah is in range. But the trouble is, you don't really want to mix and match and have something like this and something like this. Stick to the view of Tosfos.
Just one last point. One last point. In the 1890s, the Jewish Encyclopedia entry on the shofar was done by Francis Cohen, and it was done as 3 groups. Teruah was written as 3 groups of 4 for some reason, and that sort of stuck. It stuck quite a lot. It's a bit odd. I don't know why.
Very odd. 3 groups of 4.
Instead of da 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 da, it was da 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 da. It was like it.
When you say, so you end up with 12 notes for a teruah?
You end up with 12. Yeah, I don't know why that. He was a
That's interesting.
rabbi.
That's interesting because I'm sure, but you need a source for that. So we haven't seen one here. I'm not sure there is. I don't know of one. If you find any more about that, please let me know. But you're right. There's nothing wrong with blowing 12, and it's interesting. I think you'll find the professionals, they don't stop at 9, because to someone who's uninitiated, shall I say, or someone who's not a Baal Tekiah, if a person blows just 9 notes, it doesn't sound like 9. You'll say, you haven't done the 9. And therefore, what you'll find is the Baalei Tekiah normally do probably up to 12 or more, because 9, and try it, if you did 9 very fast, somebody listening who's not a professional would say, you didn't do the 9 notes. So therefore, they tend to blow more. So maybe that's how you've ended up with 12, just to make sure, that it sounds right. But strictly speaking, 9 is what you need, as long as you're sure you've actually got the 9. Okay? Now, what I want to do now, and I wonder whether, Peter, you can help me here. Can you put on the screen one of the attachments I sent, because I haven't got a printout of it? I'd like to go through the point that we raised, which was not the question of Haigorn, no, the mother of Sisera. Now, Anthony mentioned a point last week. It's interesting, this whole Yevova, we traced it back to the wording that was used with the mother of Sisera. Sisera had gone into battle, if you remember. He was victorious. He was always victorious. But this time, miraculously, Klal Yisrael managed to succeed against him. In fact, it was really miraculous. But the point we're asking is, why is it that almost like the Torah wanted us to trace this word Yevava back to this mother of Sisera who's waiting, peering out of the window, where is my son? Why is it that we utilize the mother of Sisera to teach us about the blowing of Rosh Hashanah? There's got to be some link between the mother of Sisera. You wouldn't have thought there would have been one. What is that link? Now, for this, I'd like to share with you a beautiful pshat from Rabbi Elyashiv, Zichron Levracha, Zatzal. Passed away a couple of years ago. People must have heard of Rabbi Elyashiv. Can you put that up on the screen for us, Peter? Yes, thank you very much. Pinch for a bigger view, it says. Can people hear me? Good, I'm getting a nod from people. Good. Let's have a look at this. If you'll see, you can blow it up a bit. I can read it very clearly. This is on Maseches Rosh Hashanah. It's a photograph. It's fine. I've got it. It's fine. Thank you very much indeed, Peter. I can blow it up with fingers too. It says Tosfos Divrei HaMasil Shiur Teruah. Right? It's on this Tosfos. And it talks there about Keneged. In the end, it ends up being like the 100 cries. Everybody talks about the cries of the mother of Sisera. Okay? And the question we were grappling with, why was it necessary to bring in a possum from, it's true, it's the only one we can find, but there must be something very special and significant in the mother of Sisera, that's the limit that teaches us the type of crying that we're going to be doing on Rosh Hashanah. Now, can you see on top? I'll read it. Those people, hopefully everybody can see it if you've got it up on the screen. Thank you very much, Peter. And it says, Tzorich Biur, which means it's necessary for a bit of understanding here. Ma inyan minyan tekiyah shel Rosh Hashanah. What is the connection between the counting of the blowing of Rosh Hashanah, lepios means the crying of Amar de Sisera? Is there connection? So he says the following: Al das hamusa, the great Rabbi Elyashiv, al das hamusa. There's something, a very important lesson here that we can take with us. Yesh loima, one can say, b'zeh, sheyesh b'zeh la'orer nirdomim. It should arouse those people who are sleeping in slumber. Shegam, this is fascinating. Shegam mi shemargish. Very powerful idea here. Someone who feels ba'atzmo themselves, batuach, they're certain, biyom adin, on the day of din. In brackets, in mitzad matzova hagashmi, maybe on the material side, in yona ba'olam hazeh, in this world, financially, he feels totally secure. In mitzad matzova ruchni, sheboteach b'zchuyosov, even spiritually, he feels, oh, I've done a tremendous amount this year. I am certainly okay. There's nothing, I am certain about my situation, physically, materially, spiritually. Wow, what a powerful message this is. And if cast your mind back to last year, who would have imagined? Look at this. Olov lilmoid kal v'chomer. A person should learn a kal v'chomer. In other words, how much more so may he made the Sisera from the mother of Sisera. Why? What's the story with the mother of Sisera? Shevadai, certainly, mitzad derech hateva, according to the way of nature, lo hoya lo lefached v'liro klal. It was totally unnecessary for her to be worried. So why Sisera's a bit late? He's probably collecting spoil in the battle. Shari leSisra hoya teisha meos, beginning of the line, there were 900 rechad Basel, chariots of Basel, iron. He was always successful. And they were iron. Nobody managed to penetrate those chariots. V'gam chozinon, And we saw also the Yeshua Yisrael or Shelo Kederech HaTeva. It actually was Shelo Kederech HaTeva. It was unnatural. The Klal Yisrael actually was successful. Mima she'ne'emar min hashomayim nilchamu ha'kochovim min siloisom. As if to say it was the stars. In other words, it was supernatural. The Klal Yisrael were victorious on that occasion. So, as far as the mother was concerned, she had every reason to believe there's nothing to worry about. For Hare, I'm continuing on, the bitzad derech hateva, as far as nature is concerned, or teva hamazolos, even astrologically, hoyo lo livtoyach benitzchonei shel Sisra. She should have been certain about the success of Sisra. Nevertheless, she was crying away. Why was she crying? She was worried. She was concerned. And actually, she was right. In fact, he did die in that battle. So 1 minute, it was totally unnatural. There's no reason at all why the mother of Sisera should have been concerned about the late coming of her son. But she did, and she was concerned. There was something niggling, and therefore it was bothering her. Says this, therefore a person should be aroused. The person should be concerned. Even if it appears to an individual, even though, don't worry about me, financially I'm totally secure, health, no problem at all, spiritually I'm doing great activities. A person should never feel like that. And the lesson is from the mother of Sisera, who didn't feel like that. If she didn't feel like that, we certainly are nowhere near that type of feeling she should have had, and she didn't have it. We certainly shouldn't feel like that. Peter, thank you very much. We can go back to vision now. Very powerful message. And I think, looking back last year, and it's really shown us exactly what that means. Who would have believed what's happened this past year? I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Nobody would have imagined this, but it shows you, sadly, what can happen. And clearly the idea is that we should try and think, we're not talking about the tzaddikim or Rabbi Yashiv, but let's just try and think, and if we can, move slightly further onwards and upwards, as they say. You can't jump up a ladder from the ground to the top, but let's take a small step if we can, whether it's been Odom Lachavere, been Odom Lamokim, being man and fellow man and God. Try to improve a little bit, because we should be a little bit wary, because anything can happen, and we've seen that. Nobody would believe that anything can happen, and we've seen anything can happen. So if this should really be arousing us to maybe davening, and whatever the situation is, wherever we're davening, trying our best to move onwards and upwards. With that, gentlemen, we'll stop for tonight. What I would like to say is the following, however. Some thumbs up from people here. I'm going to be sending out now a wonderful clip. It's not just a clip, actually. It's 20 minutes. Those people who are Bali Tzkiya will find this very useful. It's actually from our dear son, bless him, Moshe Yehuda, who by profession, besides being, some people know him, Moshe Yehuda, besides being a rabbi, he's also a psychotherapist, professional psychotherapist. So, but anyway, he has a wonderful piece. It's on YouTube. I'll send it to you, and I think you'll find, hopefully, that this is very useful, Asayas Chazorah, but also some actually practical tips. He's been blowing the shofar for many years, although he's not that old, but he has been blowing for many years, and you may find some very useful tips in what he says about the shofar. In particular, you'll find, stressing the point that it's a musical instrument. But in particular, I think he'll be talking about these Gemaras, and I'm not surprised. He attended some Shiurim on Rosh Hashanah many years ago, and I say he's certainly capable. And I think you'll find it useful. So by all means, I'll pass that through via Harvey, who said he will be sending it out later on. And I'll say hopefully you'll find it useful. And hope then we'll meet next week in Eretz Hashem. So meanwhile, thank you once again, Peter. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Simon. And some thumbs up from a few people here. And